Okay, here I am showing off the Past Life deck. Well, it's an Oracle card deck by Doreen Virtue and Brian Weiss. Now, as we know, Doreen doesn't do decks like this. But when she did, this was about her number 20th deck. So, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, she was one hell of a commercially smart woman who really dived into a lot of topics that are very spiritual but also very popular. Now, Brian Weiss, on the other hand, he's made a name for himself looking at past lives, and his most popular book that I know of is Many Lives, Many Masters. So if you're interested in past lives, it's definitely worth looking at. I actually know my past life. I did it at a spiritualist church and through meditation. I'm a nurse in my past life, so that tends to make a lot of sense for me when I do readings. A lot of medical, intuitive stuff pops up. But let's get back into this deck. It's a very different deck that I know of with Doreen that's done. It's more about photography as opposed to art in this deck. And to be honest, I think it's the only deck at the time or for a long time that I bought that didn't have art pictures. It was more photography. So this deck, it has a lot of topics in here. You tend to think of past lives. Everyone tends to gravitate to, I was in the Egyptian life, people tend to gravitate to Atlantis and whatnot. And, when I tell people I was a overweight fat nurse in my past life who was a bossy person in the army in a huge tent with lots of bed around me, telling the man in charge, I've got everything under control here. People tend to go, whoa, they're thinking that they're going to be some Egyptian god. So it's quite interesting. But as you can see with a lot of these cards, they not only relate to where or what time you could have in your past life, but also maybe perhaps some issues that you've had. Some people tend to not be settled and they move around a lot, and that can tend to be why do you feel that way, or even trust. So it's an interesting deck, one that I find is very accurate. I've actually read a girl and she goes, oh my gosh, I've had my professional past life done, and the card and the information that I got in the reading was freaking spot on. So it's an interesting deck, one that you won't be able to purchase brand new, because Brian Weiss, I don't think, has redone this deck. I know with Doreen, a lot of the decks that she did co-authored, they've been reprinted. But this is one that I haven't seen yet reprinted. Maybe it wasn't that popular. But for me, it's a good deck to have in your collection, one that I'll find hard to give up and get rid of my deck. But we're going to pull a card at the end here so you can just see how I like to read from the book, and then it gives you an idea of what information comes up. And the card that's going to come up in a second is the biblical card. And it says in the book, when you read about Jesus, Moses, or other biblical figures, you know that there's more to the story because you were there. Either you were a follower of Jesus or Moses, or you lived in the Holy Land. You may have also had lives alongside other famous biblical figures. As a result, traditional religious interpretations of the Bible stories don't ring true to you. You know in your heart and soul what really happened. As such, you tend to follow your own religious and spiritual path. So it's quite interesting that this card has sort of popped up at this time. If you have witnessed the crucifixion, you may have emotional scarring stemming from the heartbreak and horror that followed your beloved teacher's death. These reactions may have caused you to shut down your spiritual sight, clairvoyance, and other gifts. There's the card there on the screen. To reconnect with your God-given abilities, pray for help from the biblical reading today, again, tongue twister. To reconnect with your God-given abilities, pray for help from the biblical figures to whom you feel most connected. You'll learn that you have forgiven all transgressions and have moved on with their spiritual lives, and they'll help you do the same. Quite interesting that I picked this card, because only recently in the last month or two I've started to pull out a devotion book which gives me a little quote and a prayer, and then I read the Bible, and it's quite interesting. I've never felt compelled to do that. So this is the deck there. There is, how many cards is there? Let me check. Okay, there's 44 cards in this deck. I always find it so odd that the decks are 44, because sometimes you don't need that many, or sometimes you need more with the deck. But that is the past life deck. Please put your name and your comments below. Let me know what you think of this deck. I'd be really interested. It helps my channel. It helps me go through the decks that I have. I am clearing out my collection, and it's so hard to do when I do these recordings. It's like, oh my God, I really love this deck. I love using it, but it tends to collect dust on my shelf as well. So I hope that you enjoy this. Remember about the fraudulent decks online. Be careful there. And definitely when you buy, make sure that it's got the guidebook, and then that way you will know that it is a true deck. But don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the wonderful things that YouTube loves. And till next time on my next video.